Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm going to do another episode of PNN. Right now is a live feed from Al Jazeera. I'm going to have to roll it back because it's a live feed, but this is about the hospitals. And I'll tell you, the Al Jazeera is not playing the proper story here. They're not saying anything about how Hamas used the hospitals to hide the tunnels. They're not saying anything about how Hamas has hijacked the Palestinian people and they just want to demonize Israel. Watch. I'm going to have to roll it back.
But multiple ones, as well as aid convoys. There's 125,000 years. The study by a US-based climate think tank says that the average global temperature height that was greater in developing countries and Europe. Thousands of migrants have reached the Canary Islands by sea from West Africa. Naval ship
for checking the heading harbor.
Come on, you can find it.
Managed to say, like through the sun.
Million people work in Bangladesh's garment sector with dollars. And the desperate attempts being made to save people who are victims of Israeli airstrikes. Al Jazeera followed one young boy pulled from the rubble of his family home in Jabalia. A paramedic tried to save his life on the way to hospital, but couldn't. We've decided to play this video without any voiceover to let these pictures speak for themselves. Well, that's it for me for this news hour. I'll be back in a moment.
Rockets constantly moved to the southern area. Also, shot. Power with informed opinions. Large numbers of civilians.
Okay, so they played.
Hospital for children.
Okay, so they near the end of the show, they played for the hour. They played the child that died. Now there's going to be collateral damage. Obviously, when you're doing these bunker busters, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage because of the size of munition. Why didn't those citizens leave that area when they were warned? Why? All right. Now, it's going to happen. Children are going to die in this. But we also have to realize that for 15 years, Hamas has been digging underneath the civilians, and the civilians didn't do anything about it. And the Palestinian government has been fleecing their people by skimming NGO money, misappropriating NGO money, misappropriating US funds, misappropriating funds from Europe, even funds from their own area. And I'm sure that there are, the Red Crescent, for example, but there are organizations within the Islamic community that they're fleecing. And that it is a shame to see that children have to die in this because adults can't get the job done. But to use the emotional fallacy, like the previous video I said, don't fall into the emotional fallacy. Patriots out there and truthers out there, they said, don't fall into the emotional fallacy of 9/11, right? And view this as and try not to view this as a Pearl Harbor. So we do this unwarranted excursion in the Middle East, right, during 9/11, which was right? They said, don't pay attention to the emotional fallacy. Well, the same thing. You to be philosophically consistent, you can't buy into the emotional fallacy of the children dying in Gaza as collateral damage to stop this conflict, right? So if you're a truther, and if it's okay to not to pay attention to the emotional fallacy, then it's the same thing. It's don't pay attention to the emotional fallacy. All right. That picture looked real. All right. It looked like the child died. And actually, more people need to start seeing that. Unfortunately, healthcare workers, especially in the ER setting, see a lot of, see death, right? At different stages, either through, car accidents or, some sort of disease, advanced disease state or whatever, right? Heart attacks, right? More people need to see the rawness of what happens at that moment of death, right? And it can, as a healthcare person that sees this kind of stuff, it can be jarring and it can move them away from being a healthcare provider. So there's a lot of dimensions to this that what we just saw, and the average person that doesn't know anything about medicine at all, or they need to see that. Now, combat vets, they have a unique perspective of this kind of thing, of death and destruction, right? And there's a lot of wisdom with combat vets. Now, we have to keep in mind that there's, quote, an information war out there, an info war, right? And that there is a narrative that's trying to be painted. They want Israel is advancing through Gaza. They are winning. All right. And their casualties are relatively low for the IDF, which is pretty amazing. And I personally think that there's a divine spirit helping the IDF to root out Hamas. The Palestinians need to wake up and start saying, we don't want Hamas. We don't want these rockets right next to our homes. We don't want these tunnels right next to our hospitals. Now, we're going to play this next segment. You got to remember, the end of the hour with the death of the child, with no voiceovers, right? It really happened. It's a tragedy. There are a lot of tragedies that have taken place. And Western powers and Israel need to keep the eye on the ball, and that is to root out Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. And don't do half war. And when you do that, you're going to solve the problem in the long run. Yes, more people will get killed, militants and the civilians. But there will be more civilians that get killed if we kick the can down the road any longer. How many more children need to die? If we don't do all war, there will be more children that die in the long run. In the short run, there will be more children that die as of today's tally. But the thing is that the Palestinian people let the fleecing of their country happen with their officials, and they let their society be hijacked by Hamas. Those are facts. Al Jazeera won't say. Now, let's play their segment on the hospitals. Now, keep in mind, they put hospitals next to rocket launch sites. They put hospitals next to tunnels. They literally dug tunnels, built infrastructure for the tunnel, and then put a hospital on top of it in 2010, paid for by NGOs. So when they say this segment, keep that in mind, that Israel, to destroy the enemy, has to destroy the hospitals, because the enemy embedded themselves within the hospital and under the hospital.
From Doha, coming up in the next 60 minutes. Gaza's only hospital for children suspends operations after it comes under repeated Israeli attacks. Catastrophic devastation and a mounting human toll. Israeli airstrikes and artillery pound buildings and homes across Gaza. 10,812 Palestinians have now been killed. Fleeing on foot with whatever they can carry, tens of thousands of people are moving south to try to escape Israeli attacks in northern Gaza. The White House says that Israel has now agreed to a 4-hour daily humanitarian pause in the north. And Qatar's Emir is heading to Egypt as it mediates negotiations over a possible pause in fighting in exchange for the release of some Hamas captives. In the occupied West Bank, fierce gun battles rage between Israeli forces and Palestinian fighters in Jenin. At least 10 Palestinians have been killed. Well, it is now just on 1600 GMT. That's 6 o'clock in the evening in Gaza. And we begin with breaking news. Gaza's only hospital for children is now out of service. The Al-Nasser hospital has come under repeated Israeli attacks. More than half of the hospitals in Gaza have now shut down. The White House says that Israel has now agreed to daily 4-hour humanitarian pauses to allow civilians to flee northern Gaza. Tens of thousands of people have been...
Remember what I said? Remember what I said about Al Jazeera and the way that Ishmael and Esau work in that whole region, right? The Islamic community. They'll say something, and the way they word it, the way they frame it, is not telling the whole story. All right? And hold on. I had to have my coffee. All right. So the way they're framing it is not telling the whole story. They said Israel attacked the hospital. They're firing at the hospital and all this crap, right? True. They don't tell you the other part of the story, that the fucking Hamas is in the hospital. Fucking Hamas is launching rockets next to the hospital. Hospitals, plural. And that aid and provisions are going to run low. They're going to run low for these hospitals because of Hamas digging in, and Israel has to root them out. And there's only certain corridors that can be safely for safe passage. Hamas did this to the Palestinian people. That's the big point. But they'll only frame it in such a way where it's Israel's fault. Oh no, Hamas has nothing to do with this. Oh, by the way, breaking news from the occupied East Jerusalem. I'm telling you, gotta be careful the way they frame it.
To escape the fighting up in the north, where Israeli ground forces have been engaged in fierce street battles with Hamas fighters. Well, the death and destruction in Gaza has led to renewed diplomatic momentum. Senior Hamas leaders are in Egypt, and the Emir of Qatar is also on his way there, while the Reuters news agency is reporting that the heads of the CIA and Mossad have been in Doha. As we've been saying, the Emir of Qatar is on his way to the UAE and Egypt. Well, let's speak to our correspondent, Tariq Abouazoum. He joins us now from the ground there in Khan Yunis, in the south of the Gaza Strip. Tariq, tell us a little bit more about what's been happening at Al-Nasser Hospital and all the other hospitals that we've been hearing about. They've been in dire straits now for weeks.
They're going to only focus on Israel attacking the hospitals and the provisions running low. But they won't say that Hamas is embedded in the hospitals. Hamas is under the hospitals. Hamas is firing rockets 70 meters away from the hospital.
Yes, Al-Nasser Hospital, considered to be the main central hospital that provides treatment for young babies and newly born babies who are really in massive need for medical care. This hospital is considered to be the largest from its kind across the territory, as the Israeli occupation forces has targeted it directly, as the entrance of this hospital has been widely bombarded. This is considered to be not the first attack that has been carried out against the Gaza hospitals. Now, this hospital is vital for providing medical treatment for different kinds of babies who are newly born, and even for babies for children from 1 up to 10 years. These medical services have been completely shut off, as the Israeli occupation forces are causing massive destruction and affect negatively on the ability of the medical teams to keep providing the treatment there. As it's important to mention that a young baby today has been passed away due to the Israeli ongoing blackout of electricity, as the hospital is no longer able to afford fuel.
There was a child early in the video that died. Okay, there are children that are dying at the hospital because of lack of provisions. These are real, right? This is the rawness of war. But it's also the realization of the negative externalities of allowing for a failed policy in the Middle East to continue. Going forward, the only answer to this is to destroy full war terrorists. Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. The whole world will be more at peace. But we have Western powers that want to just play footsie. We have individuals in the media that want to, think that a ceasefire is going to be adequate to reach homeostasis. We have a group of citizens in this country, the ultra-liberal, that doesn't understand that that their liberal policies have brought a curse down from above. And then you have truthers that want to be isolationists and aren't philosophically consistent on anything.
To keep operating main departments, as clearly know that babies are requiring constant electric currents in order to keep being provided with oxygen and even other medical supplies. Now, these attacks could not be recently new, but it has been carried out since the early beginning of this fighting, as even more than 34 Palestinian hospital and medical care centers have been partially destroyed and become out of service. Also, main central hospitals, including Shifa and even the inpatient hospital, has been repeatedly attacked. We are talking about the solar panels that have been directly targeted on the roof of the Shifa hospital in order to affect on the ability of hospital to keep operating as the ongoing blackout of electricity and the fuel prices continue.
Tarek, Al-Nasser specifically was a children's hospital before it shut down, and that obviously has huge consequences for the children who are now still trapped in Gaza. What kind of pediatric facilities are remaining? Are there any?
Yes, we are talking about some main facilities that still operating depending on secondary generators. The majority of hospitals in the Gaza Strip were forced to minimize the consumption of fuel as they are depending, and they have stopped using the main generators after the blackout of electricity, and now they are depending on minor generators. Different hospitals also in the territory cut off electricity from some main departments in order to ensure that they will be able to keep providing emergency services on the reception hall down of the hospital. Also, the different hospitals in the territory are witnessing severe, relentless attacks in its facilities, which really impose another threat that these hospitals might be targeted if the Israel occupation forces expanded the military operations on the ground.
And Tarek, you've been telling us a little there about bombardments. We've also
so my understanding with this Khan Yunis, it's really provisions that are shutting down the hospital. And we had the other firefights and all that in the Qatar hospital and the Indonesian hospital.
I think that's ongoing in Gaza City. Do we know where these street battles are currently taking place?
Yes, the relentless bombardment and fire exchange continue for more than 30 days between Palestinian fighters and the Israeli occupation forces. Now, the Israeli occupation forces started their military ground operation from the outskirts of the Gaza Strip, and they start moving forwards and deeper into the urban areas.
The Israeli occupation forces. Why don't they just call it the IDF and Hamas? Right? They spin it. They gotta say something that's just like Israeli occupation.
In order to destroy the military infrastructure of the Palestinian fighters, as the Israeli occupation spokesperson announced earlier, since the beginning of this war. Also, the main concentration of the Israeli attacks are in the eastern areas of Beit Hanun and in the northwest of Beit Lahia, and we are talking about the entire coastal line of the Gaza Strip, witness also massive advancements of the Israeli military artillery, who are trying right now to infiltrate more into a shelter refugee camp under heavy military bombardments. Also, in the southern areas of the Gaza Strip, there were limited attempts by the Israeli occupation forces to carry out limited ground invasion to the eastern areas of both Khan Yunis and Rafah district.
Tarek was in there with that live report for us from the ground in Khan Yunis in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Thank you, Tarek. Please stay safe. Well, let's now bring in Abdulhamid Siama, Professor of Political Science and Middle East Studies at Rutgers University. He joins me here again in our Doha studio. Abdulhamid, let's start with what we're hearing about Al-Nasser Hospital. This was a children's facility.
Yes.
And it really sounds like there's just no provision left for children or for anyone really with any chronic diseases left in the Gaza Strip.
That shows that Israel is waging an all-out war against every Palestinian, every institution, every sector. No place is safe. No Palestinian group people is safe. Be they children, women, hospitals, schools.
Because the Palestinian people are complicit in allowing Hamas to continue for multiple years, digging and digging and shooting and shooting and digging and shooting and digging and shooting for 15 years.
It's an all-out war. It is being waged not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. What we have seen also in the West Bank complement the whole picture of what's going on in Gaza. It's not that if they're trying to target Hamas. No, they are targeting the whole Palestinian people, including children.
No. Where is the in Al Jazeera that's saying that Hamas is dug into the population? Haven't seen it yet.
But those that have been targeted have also become shelters for tens of thousands of people.
Exactly.
Because they're the last remaining, well, in terms of trying to choose your refuge, they're some of the only buildings still remaining with a little bit of water, a little bit of electricity. How are people now coping? We've been talking.
I'm going to jump into France 24. It's saying Israel-Hamas War is causing shortages in the hospitals, and then they can't stop the infections. Is this the beginnings of something that is maybe of biological origin? Maybe. This is France 24.
What kind of life are we living? People around the world in all countries are living. We are not living. Every 2 years there's a war. There's no water, no food, there's nothing to drink, there's no justice.
This hospital treats cancer patients, but with Gaza's healthcare system in a state of total collapse, there's no way it can provide the care they need.
We are experiencing a healthcare disaster. All the medical supplies have run out. All the medicine for cancer patients has run out.
I think supplying for the hospitals, under the auspice of humanitarian aid should happen. That should happen, that's for sure. But to say that the Gazans are just in the crossfire, in many ways, they're complicit.
We're heading towards a catastrophe.
The trickle of humanitarian aid coming into Gaza is nowhere near enough to replenish medical supplies. It's the same for food and water. From the early hours, hundreds of people gather at water distribution points, but there's never enough to go around. And humanitarian convoys are themselves at risk, like these ICRC trucks that were hit on Tuesday.
Willfully impeding relief supplies to a population under bombardment is a war crime, and the Israeli government needs to immediately allow fuel in through the Egyptian crossings, as well as to take measures to open its own crossings for life-saving humanitarian relief.
Humanitarian agencies are united in their calls for a ceasefire to finally give some relief from what they call an unfathomable level of death and human suffering in Gaza.
An investigation is opened here in Paris after.
I keep on saying, God is coming down and bringing. There's a divine curse hitting man. So they want to blame the Israelis, and everyone's at fault here. Israel's at fault. Hamas is at fault. The Palestinians are at fault, right? Everyone's at fault. Even the children are at fault, all right? Because you don't know how they're going to be brought up. You don't know what kind of soul root they're coming from, all right? And there's a high probability that, because they're coming from the soul root of Ishmael and Esau, that they're going to end up being just wild beasts. I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality when you're looking at this from a metaphysical lens. There's a punishment that is happening. So instead of blaming the Israelis, why don't you look in the mirror and actually realize that your policies have failed your country? There's a resetting that's taking. Everyone was talking about the Great Reset in the last crisis. That wasn't the Great Reset. This messianic thing that's going on, this is the Great Reset. It ain't about money. It ain't about your constitutional rights. It's about actually the resetting of the borders and the rebooting of the temple. And people need to realize that everyone's getting judged. Everyone's going to have a certain level of hardship. everyone is going to have a curse. But if you repent, you make the world a better place, you set things right, you'll actually get a blessing. But what is evil has to be rooted out. And for us as a society to reach homeostasis, we cannot maintain the status quo with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. They need to be destroyed.
Yes, after scores of Stars of David were found branded across French capital's walls last week, the arrests of a couple allegedly involved in the acts of vandalism have led to suspicions of foreign interference.
These Stars of David, spray-painted across buildings in the Paris region, have sparked national outrage. And our fingers are pointing towards a pro-Russian attempt at destabilization. Last week, residents of this small alleyway in the French capital were shocked when they discovered the symbols on their walls. The perpetrators fled, but investigators managed to pinpoint the suspects. From CCTV footage, they identified a Moldovan couple accompanied by a third person photographing their actions. The investigators made a connection with 250 other similar marks in Paris and the outer suburbs. 4 days earlier, the same stars had been spotted in the 10th district. But this time, the perpetrators, another Moldovan couple, were arrested on the spot with their phones containing messages in Russian from a presumed backer.
Why would the Russians get involved?
These two cases seem to be linked because we have the same modus operandi, the same outline. We were able to check with their telephone that they were in contact, the two couples were in contact, with a backer abroad.
But to what end? According to Le Monde journalist Damien Leloup, the images have been used online to manipulate attitudes throughout Europe.
Based on our knowledge, these photos were only distributed by fake accounts belonging to the same pro-Russian disinformation network. Each time, these photos were posted with a message saying, "It's a real shame this has happened in our city. We don't realize it, but the conflict in the Middle East will impact us all."
He says this was part of a vast Russian disinformation operation that France's government has been calling out for months.
The aim is to divide European societies, to frighten them and to give them the idea that in this context, everyone is better off at home. We must not get involved with Ukraine and the Middle East.
The case is now in the hands of an investigating judge.
We move on to another conflict in the war in Ukraine, which is making little progress on the front lines. Kyiv, though, scoring major.
Now let's drop back into Al Jazeera.
About how nowhere is safe. Where is there for anyone to go beyond hospitals if hospitals are now being forced to close?
No, I don't think there is any safe place in Gaza now. Even the south, which they're telling people to go from the north to the south, look at what happened. They have a ground attack in Rafah and in Khan Yunis that's supposedly to be safe areas, and supposedly the humanitarian poses.
Any mention of Hamas there yet? Oh no. On Al Jazeera? Oh no. Mark my words. This policy is going after Jews and Christians.
Would allow people to go there, and the attacks are there. There is no what inch in Gaza that has not been bombarded. If the children hospital is not safe, there is no place safe in Gaza.
I want to talk about deliberate targeting that we've seen, because the Israelis have also said they came out and said that they've actually targeted ambulances. They said those ambulances were being used by Hamas. The Gaza Health Ministry says they absolutely were not. We have seen multiple medical facilities, not only children's hospitals, but multiple ones, as well as aid convoys, as well as ambulances with the injured being moved around, targeted. What do you make of all of that? Because obviously the international community is watching.
Yeah, they want to make life in Gaza almost impossible. That means if even the war stops tomorrow or after tomorrow, that people cannot go ahead with their life as normal. There's nothing left in Gaza that people...
It's not the Jews doing this. It is a divine presence that's really pissed off. Don't be surprised that there's mass casualties.
They destroyed everything. They destroyed the infrastructure, the small facilities, the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the buildings. So people, even if the war stops tomorrow, how are people going to survive? So it is, again, in my opinion, it's a war against the Palestinian people. They want the Palestinian people to raise the white flag. That will not happen. They didn't learn from history. They've been fighting Gaza again and again, and maybe like the refugee camp in Geneva today. They invaded this refugee camp tens of times. Yet they go back to the same refugee camp. Yet they go back to the same place in Gaza. Now they are having probably a new plan to make life impossible, because there's so much pressure now mounting around the world to impose kind of ceasefire or humanitarian poses. So they want to do as much as damage before that happens.
You used the phrase the humanitarian pause. Obviously, that's been widely discussed. Is there any humanity left? I mean, we're talking about a humanitarian pause, and yet we're seeing children's hospitals being bombed.
That shows that, I mean, the global conscience is absent. The humanitarian attack on these the children hospital, to be a target and to see that life is going on in the White House and in the UN and in Europe, life is going as usual. This is unbelievable. It's unprecedented. I have never seen things like that. I witnessed so many wars working for the UN for so many years, from the war between Iraq and Iran to the war in Iraq twice. I haven't seen that people are, I mean, these countries.
This is because it's a different conflict. He's just proving my point. There is a divine curse coming down on mankind. And if you're not on the right side, you're going to get fucked. And they're not on the right side. You know why they're not on the right side? Because they allowed terrorists, a bunch of animals, to take control of their country. There's a cancer that's spread. Now you got to dig it out. And there's going to be a lot of carnage. There's going to be a lot of blood. There's going to be a lot of tissue damage. That's the collateral damage to get this fixed. Because there was 15 years of building facilities and infrastructure for Hamas. Do you think if the United States had someone digging in for 15 years along the border on the Mexican side, and they started launching rockets and hitting towns and going over the border and killing people in Texas, that the United States would not do all-out fucking war on Mexico? Of course we would.
Are going with business as nothing happening? This is unbelievable. So now the pressure should be mounted to impose a ceasefire in Gaza.
That war is going to cause more death.
The Security Council had failed even so far to pass a resolution calling just for humanitarian ceasefire and allowing the humanitarian aid to come in. This is unbelievable. I cannot comprehend what's going on now in the Security Council and in the international community.
Especially as we watch that death toll continue to rise.
Yes.
Now more than 4,000 children.
Yes.
Abdulhamid Siam, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me here again on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Well, in some breaking news, literally just in, we've been hearing from the Palestinian Al-Quds brigades, their military spokesperson. They say that they are now prepared to release 2 hostages for humanitarian and medical reasons. Just to explain that again, the Palestinian Al-Quds brigades, their military spokesperson, has said they are now prepared to release 2 hostages for humanitarian and medical reasons. We're told that's only if conditions on the ground are met. We'll be finding out all the details for you here on Al Jazeera and bringing them to you as we
only if the conditions are favorable for the terrorists to hide. Breaking news on Al Jazeera.
Well, from north to south, Israeli airstrikes and artillery, as you've been hearing, have been pounding refugee camps, hospitals, as I mentioned, mosques, churches. The human toll is rising fast. At least 10,812 Palestinians are now known to have been killed. Michael Apple reports on the constant Israeli assaults on Gaza and the desperate humanitarian conditions in the north.
Smoke rises following an explosion behind Gaza's largest hospital. Temporary shelters outside its entrance are packed, among them the injured and the dead. In northern Gaza, a prayer for those killed. For nearly a month, there's been no electricity to power fridges at the morgue.
Many dead bodies are decomposed, others charred beyond recognition. We, the Ministry of Health, together with the Justice Ministries, have prepared this mass parade.
No one is untouched by Israel's bombing campaign.
We're all families. Some of my family members are killed, some injured and some missing. We're now looking for one another.
In Jabalia, at least 9 people were killed. Many more are missing, most likely buried under rubble. Israeli forces have entered Gaza City and are battling Palestinian fighters street by street and house by house. In the south, in Khan Yunis, overnight bombing leveled buildings, leaving a desperate search for survivors. If they say there will be calm, they know that there will be a massacre. My father, who is 70, was sleeping in this house. Also, my 2 sisters were killed here. Those able to get out head for the Rafah border crossing with Egypt.
This is the gateway to a hellish nightmare. I cannot even fathom to think what people are going through on the other side.
The humanitarian.
Don't be surprised when hell is on earth because of the wrongdoings of mankind. We're all at fault here, and I am not wrong on how this is playing out.
This is unfolding in Gaza is unprecedented.
I am trying to get a loaf of bread for my children. I have nothing to feed them. We are begging. We cannot even find a drop of water to drink.
Almost half of the dead are children.
Should have made sure in the last 15 years that you didn't let Hamas dig in.
I wish I could go back home. I hope I can go back to school and see my teachers. I wish I could go back and play with my friends. I hate war because it took the lives of all my friends. When night returns, so do Israel's bombs, and nowhere is safe. Mike Lapple, Al Jazeera.
Well, the White House is saying that Israel will implement 4-hour pauses in its military assaults each day in northern Gaza. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, daily pauses. What else did we hear from John Kirby?
Yeah, the national security spokesperson, John Kirby, has been talking to reporters. And as I have been reporting in the last couple of hours, that phone call that took place between Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, Joe Biden in that call did suggest to Benjamin Netanyahu that there be a 3-day pause. That was rejected by the Israeli prime minister. He believed that that amounted to something of a ceasefire. And as a result, what we have now are what the U.S. and Israel call humanitarian pauses. And according to John Kirby, the parameters have now been worked out. And what these look like are 4-hour pauses in military operations that will take place daily.
In the Bible, it talks about how God told the Israelis, go and fight this kingdom. I want you to take over the land. And many times the Jews followed what God wanted. And there were times when they didn't. And the Jews were punished. How is that any different than what is going on now? And I'll give you something that is even scarier. You ready? Sit down. It's going to scare the hell out of you. All right? People need to start realizing what was written in the Torah is not just the past, but it's actually the future. You are actually seeing a biblical event happening that was already written. Now, get your mind around that. Now, should Israel stop? Knowing that there's going to be divine retribution on them? God doesn't want the Palestinians there. And then people will go, how could you say that? Well, first of all, it's written in the Torah for the last 3,000 years. But these events that are taking place are wrapped up and have already been decided. We think we have free will, right? But it's already been decided. And these events historically in the Bible are not just events of the time, but of future events because of this rhyme of the fib sequence. You're actually seeing the Bible play out right now. Now, I know a lot of people will not understand what I'm saying because they have this linear idea of time, but time is circular. But it's not a complete circle. It's that fib sequence.
Understand is that they will have 3-hour advance notices and that there will be 2 corridors allowing for civilians to come out of Gaza. Now, in terms of those corridors, we know that at least one of those corridors will be open for at least 4 hours per day in northern Gaza. And then there is a second corridor that will be along a coastal road that will allow people to flee to the south. Now, in terms of humanitarian aid crossing from Egypt into Gaza through that Rafah crossing, the United States and Israel saying that they have worked out a goal that 150 trucks.
This is actually pretty smart. This is very smart what the Israelis are doing. All right. If they did a 3-day ceasefire, all right, the citizens of northern Gaza would get complacent and not move. Now, if you have daily pauses of 4 hours and there's these windows for them to be able to evacuate, it's going to be very self-evident if Hamas is holding the Gazans back and preventing them from leaving. And it's going to be all over the news. Here's another data point, right? DrPaulCottrell's not wrong on this. Here's another data point showing how the snake is going to eat its tail. How Hamas, through its actions, are going to be shown in the whole world on what they're doing to the people. All right? So it's going to force these windows of opportunity to get out, to evacuate, and to get aid, right? You'll be able to see the flow of people going to the south now. All right, you got to remember, the IDF is controlling all of North Gaza, and they bifurcated the Gaza Strip, so they're controlling. They can control this. All right, this is, you kind of see it sometimes during planned events in New York or during rallies or protests. The police will put these barriers in down certain avenues and during certain streets, and it's more of a way to control the protest. All right, where you don't need as many police to control the pen of all these people within these borders. There's these barriers, metal barriers they put up around the street, especially during like New Year's. You can see how they can control the flow of people. All right. Israel's doing something similar. There's these 4-hour windows or 3-hour windows for supplies and for people to get out. Oh, You lost your moment in time. What it does is it forces that complacency to not be there within the population. So the next window, they'll try to get out. They miss that window, they'll try to get out the next window, the next day. And eventually what you'll see is that the people will start to try to get out. If Hamas is holding them back, it'll be obvious. And the ones are staying that can't leave or don't want to leave, right, will get some aid, all right? But they're probably far better off getting into the southern side of the bifurcation. This is a pretty smart move versus a ceasefire. And you're going to see, and Hamas, if they're headstrong, they're going to dig in and fight the Israelis. And that's exactly what the IDF wants. They want to kill Hamas and try to get as many of the civilians out of the way. But they should not stop. No half war.
In terms of humanitarian aid, that would be food, medicine, other critical supplies. What we know is that is in dire need, particularly as you've been discussing the hospitals and the fact that there is very, very little to work with, particularly when it comes to surgeries, pain medications, almost medieval conditions.
Almost medieval conditions. They live in medieval conditions for thousands of years. So quit that bullshit. Here's another example of the snake eating its tail for the ultra-liberal. See this mass caravan of people trying to evacuate and get to safety. The ultra-liberal, when they see these mass caravans coming from South America and all the way through Central America, through Mexico and into the United States, unfettered, the ultra-liberal says that's okay. Keep the borders open. Well, why the fuck isn't it okay, ultra-liberal, for them to flood over the border into Egypt? Huh? Why? Why isn't it okay? Ultra-liberal. Another example of how the ultra-liberal isn't consistent and it's going to eat its tail because it's stupid.
So what we know is that right now, as of Wednesday, only 106 trucks were able to get in. The goal is 150. Now, very quickly, the U.S. president has just left the White House. He has gone to Illinois, where he will be talking about economics. He was asked about the captives that are being held by Hamas. What we know is that right now, the U.S. president says he is optimistic that there are going to be some released, potentially as part of this interruption in military operations. What we are expecting is that they could be released in batches of 10 to 15, according to John Kirby. But this could take place over a period of days. And the U.S. president saying that he is optimistic and he is going to continue working until all of these hostages are released, or rather captives, that is, are released.
Kimberly Halkett there, our White House correspondent with the very latest for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Kimberly. Well, let's now get more on all of this from Alan Fisher. He's in occupied East Jerusalem. Alan, as we've been hearing, Israel has rammed...
In occupied East Jerusalem, because those bad Israelis want the Temple Mount. I'll tell you, it's truly amazing. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my channel by purchasing the health products that will improve your health. And if you follow my anti-aging protocol, what will happen is you'll actually slow down your aging. So Max 35, take this with a teaspoon a day and it will neutralize pathogens. You swish it in your mouth, you gargle with it, you swallow it, and you do this every day. It's a structural nanosilver liquid. Silver gel. This will neutralize pathogens You're in the cold season, so put it around your mouth, put it on your hands, put it around your eyes, put it around your ears, put it around your nose, and it will neutralize pathogens. It can be also used as a skincare product. You keep it on your skin over the night, and you'll notice that your face will start to tighten. If you couple that with vitamin C and my collagen product on my store, what you'll notice is that the dermal layer will improve, especially if you're drinking 64 ounces of water that is filtered. All right, you do that for 2 weeks, a month, you'll notice that your skin is a lot better. So it's a silver gel, vitamin C, collagen. If you want an extra kick to improve your skin, also take the C60 teaspoon a day with resveratrol. Take lignans. All right, this is a powder. It helps with the immune system. It also helps with hormonal health for males and females. All right, so please take this, take it every day, put it in a smoothie, put it in hummus, put it in water. But the idea is to take it every day and it'll improve your health. With a good immune system, you're going to be able to fight cancer. I wonder what's going to happen in the post-era crisis that we just went through. Structural nano silver soaps. Don't be a smelly liberal that is constantly eating its tail. Use the structural nano silver soaps, and I have it in different varieties. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's a high-end soap. Please get a few bars of this. It's a great product for a holiday gift. A lot of people out there are saying stuff on YouTube that you shouldn't trust because they have a filthy mouth. But if you take my toothpaste, you won't have a filthy mouth. You know why? Because it has structural nano silver. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize pathogens, and reduce gingivitis. By doing that and having proper oral health, you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease as well. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a few toothpastes from my store. This is going to make sure that you don't turn into a filthy mouth ultra liberal. You want to be a filthy mouth conservative. I also have another type of silver gel. This actually is a higher ppm. I think it's 35 ppms. Maybe 30. I think it's 35. 35 ppms. And this is in a dispenser, so it's easy to carry instead of a tube. You use it the exact same way as the silver gel. So please go to my store and get this extra strength silver gel. To improve your cardiovascular disease, because every time you click on YouTube, it gives you high blood pressure, you need to take omega-3. By taking omega-3, you're going to improve your lipid profile. By improving your lipid profile, what's going to happen is that you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease. I also told you a protocol on how to actually reduce plaque if you pay attention to my videos. So please take omega-3 every day to improve your cardiovascular health. Now back to the news.
It rejected a ceasefire, but it now says there'll be pauses. How are they talking about this?
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister's office, within minutes of the White House statement, had said there will be no ceasefire, not until the captives are released. They've made their position very clear. Benjamin Netanyahu has repeated this again and again. Now, you can point to the fact that over the last few days, there have been the ability for people in northern Gaza to move south. There has been certainly less fighting in those areas to allow them to make that move. And it's estimated that on Thursday, 50,000 people made the journey from northern Gaza into southern Gaza. But the idea that this is now going to be a 3 or 4 hour pause in the fighting certainly seems to have been rebuffed by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Their position has always been clear. Now, it's a week ago that John Kirby said there should be humanitarian pauses, they should be localised and they should be specific. And it appears that by opening up those roads, that may be what the Israelis have been doing. But certainly the word ceasefire has never been used, and humanitarian pause has never been used by the Israelis. And it's clear from this statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office that perhaps the United States, John Kirby in particular, and the Israelis are not on the same page on this.
Some very interesting dynamics. Alan Fisher there with the latest for us from Occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you, Alan.
Occupied East Jerusalem, because the Muslims must have the Temple Mount.
Well, let's take you now to some of the latest pictures that we're getting from the Gaza Strip. This is the northern part of the Gaza Strip, in an area which is believed to be near the Indonesian hospital or in the hospital. There's been shelling very, very nearby. Now, we heard from the Gaza Health Ministry just a few hours back.
Don't you remember I said that there are tunnel systems that were put in the ground in 2010 before the hospital was built with NGO money to hide the tunnels? Of course there's going to be a lot of activity around the hospital. Did she say that? I hope you don't donate to those NGOs that actually built the hospital over that tunnel system, because you're complicit. You actually helped Hamas.
The hospital was running so low on fuel that it was going to go entirely, it was going to have to close all operations within 24 hours. We know the lights have gone out there before, and they managed to get them turned back on several weeks back, but they've been running with very few supplies for days and days now. You're watching injured people being moved around after this shelling that's taken place very close to that area. We know this is all in northern Gaza. This is all in a part of the Gaza Strip which the Israeli military has asked people to leave from, but obviously hospital staff have said that they need to stay on to do what they can to help their communities and treat the wounded. A lot of these hospitals in these areas have also become shelters for so many people who've been displaced, families who've lost their homes. These have become some of the only places that people have felt were vaguely safe at all. So tens of thousands of people have been sheltering in these areas. They're running very low on everything. And just to remind you what I was saying before, the Gaza Health Ministry says this hospital will have to shut down entirely within 24 hours if it receives no more fuel. And now, just hours later, we are getting reports of shelling very close to that medical facility. That off the back of multiple hospitals being forced to shut down and multiple hospitals being damaged in airstrikes. Well, if you're just joining us now on the News Hour on Al Jazeera,
this is a classic example when you don't take hold the precious aspects of self-governance and to build your society and work with your neighbors. Instead, what has happened is it's been a never-ending war with the Israelis. You can't even do self-governance properly in Gaza. You let the fleecing of your people through your political establishment, and you let terrorists get dug into your society. This is the end result. This is the end result. There's a lot of carnage and damage and destruction and sadness, but that's war. And if you keep on kicking the can down the road, we're going to see this tenfold. 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. I'm telling you, God is punishing everybody. Everybody. And I would not be surprised that unconventional warfare in biologics are used somewhere down the road here to teach mankind a lesson.
the aftermath, very latest pictures, so pictures just in the last few minutes coming in of the aftermath of shelling. So we're watching
the Dow is down about 20 points, S&P 500
near the Indonesian
almost up 2
hospital
points.
in northern Gaza. And we also know that this hospital is also running very low on everything, including fuel. We do expect that that will have to shut down within the next 24 hours. That's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Now, just to recap what we've seen.
Now, think about the strategy that Israelis are doing. You know, think about this. Home gamers, all right? Sit down and learn. The strategy is this. We know that Hamas has dug underneath these hospitals, shooting rockets from the grounds of the hospital or around the hospital. There are cases where they're actually shooting out of the hospital. Shut down the provisions, use up all the material that the hospital has, and then now the patients have to move. And the people are no longer sheltering in the hospital because there's no provisions. Now, it's cleaning it out, so it's separating Hamas from the civilian population. The civilians didn't take the advice of the IDF to go to the south and get out of the way. All right. Now they're hiding in the hospital. Hamas is dug in. The best thing to do is give them no reason to be at the hospital. It's a smart strategy. And then kill Hamas. And then probably blow up the hospital because it was put up, this Indonesian hospital was put up on false pretenses. Just think about the metaphysics of this, home gamers. You build a hospital that's supposed to help heal on the foundation of terrorism. Literally. And then you wonder why there's carnage and destruction. Another data point out of 100 data points that shows on how the snake is eating its tail.
Also, more than half of the hospitals in Gaza have already been forced to shut down. We've heard that the Al-Nasser Children's Hospital in a different part of the Gaza Strip has also now been forced to shut down because it's sustained so much damage. So let's now bring in Abdulhamid Siam, who I was just discussing.
Anything on Al Jazeera about Hamas?
Situation that the Gaza Strip finds itself in now. Abdulhamid, I imagine this is coming as no surprise to you based on what we were just discussing a few minutes ago.
No, I think Israel will escalate in the next few days so much because they might come up to the point that they have to stop the war, or at least
no, what they did was they're cornering Hamas because they surrounded Gaza City and they're gonna fucking kill them all. That's what's happening.
For a few days be imposed on them. There is a mounting pressure on Israel and the United States to do that. So they want to do as much as damage to the Palestinians, the society at large, both in Gaza and the West Bank. Before that moment,
Netanyahu has nothing to lose politically. Nothing. His career's over. He has nothing to lose. And he'll be actually viewed in the history of Israel as a major leader if he can get the job done and root out Hamas. So he's go all out, all war. He's got nothing to lose. These policy, I mean, you know, like I said, don't focus on Aristotle logic and trying to, you know, de-escalate and all this, because this thing is what has come down is a divine issue. So some dipshit from Rutgers isn't going to be able to solve the problem.
we will see more massacres, this kind of what happened.
More massacres, but what about Hamas?
Do you think that, particularly now, what we're seeing up in the north, is this part of a kind of strategy to try to clear out the north?
Yeah.
We've seen people, tens of thousands,
clear
of
out the
people
north, and then be.
There's this idea now that there will be these pauses specifically to evacuate the north.
Right.
That's what Israel
right.
and the US are saying, to get people out. Is that the whole idea? Bomb the north and get people to leave, and then have no one left?
No, you're missing the point, honey, because you're on Al Jazeera. Get people to move so they can hunt and kill and destroy Hamas. Honey. You know, they just frame it. They just frame it just like
from south to north, or from north to south. They've been bombed while they are walking the road. Even the ambulances, which were taking injured people on the coastal road, also moving from north to south, they've been bombed and they were killed. So there is no safe place. People don't agree, don't believe that moving from one place to the other, that makes them safer. That is across the board in Gaza. There is no safe place in Gaza. Now they're trying to impose or inflict so much damage on the Palestinian as a whole. They want them to raise the white flag, as I said, and I don't think they will do. The Palestinian will never do that.
Abdul, let me ask you, because you yourself used to work for the United Nations. Yes. Where is the UN in all of this? I mean, just a few days ago, I was speaking to the Gaza director of UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, who was saying that they could no longer offer protection under the UN flag. So what is the UN's role now? I mean, presumably, if there are supposed to be humanitarian corridors, broad evacuations, and now these pauses with tens of thousands of people on the road, is the UN supposed to play a part?
The UN is going to get involved, and you're going to see on how inept the UN really is, and why we should abolish the UN. If I was president of the United States, my very first act as president would tell the military, brick by brick, dismantle the UN, put it on a ship, and dump all of the material in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And then turn the rest of the land into a dog park. So little doggies can run around and poop all over the place.
The humanitarian agencies are trying. I mean, they've been raising their voices. I mean, they attended every conference. I mean, the General Commissioner of UNRWA, or the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, went in himself to Gaza, and he visited some of those shelters. They're trying, but that is not the issue. The issue is with the political organ of the United Nations. That's the one which takes decision. It's the Security Council. It has been paralyzed because of the United States. They don't want to embrace the idea of a ceasefire, which is other countries are calling for. And so far, they vetoed 2 draft resolutions.
Why do we assume that the other countries that are calling for a ceasefire are individuals or countries that we should listen to? Even the United States. Why should we listen to it? Because it's kicking the can down the road and making the problem worse for future generations, or for us 10 years from now. No, it's time to get it over with. It's time to remodel the kitchen.
It's going nowhere because of the US insisting on no ceasefire. That is the issue. And also they want in any draft resolution to impose another agenda item, which is the right of Israel to defend itself. Now people don't believe that is the right to defend itself, to kill 10,000 civilians, or to kill children, or to target hospitals, or to target schools. That is not called self-defense. It is, frankly, it is war crimes. It is collective punishment. It is violation of international humanitarian law.
It's collective punishment from the Israelis to be bombing Gaza to fight Hamas, and there's collateral damage, and there's displacement of the people, and the civilians are getting killed. No, it's collective responsibility, motherfucker. the collective responsibility of the citizens of Gaza should have prevented Hamas from digging in. Collective responsibility.
The terms that are being thrown around here: ceasefire, humanitarian pause, tactical pause. Everyone has a different take on it, but they all really mean different things. What we're hearing about right now is a pause. So a daily 4-hour pause. By my understanding, this is just in northern Gaza in order to allow or encourage people to leave. But as you were just saying, there are obviously bombardments continuing in the south. That's what's also holding up aid deliveries. So just to be clear, this is not the humanitarian pause or anything like a ceasefire that various different nations and various different agencies have been pushing for.
Every agency now, every humanitarian agency, human rights groups, the Paris conference is calling for ceasefire. Call it a humanitarian or not, but that is ceasefire. That means guns has to be silent.
I'm telling you, this is biblical, man. You look at these pictures, man. It's just like, even though it's, you know, human munitions, but just the pictures of it are just like, it's almost like fire and brimstone.
Ceasefire. What is the UN calling? What is the Secretary General is calling? What even President Macron speech called for ceasefire. Ceasefire means there is no fire shot during this period. So that is what Gaza is needed. So they allow humanitarian aid to come in big, large volume and allow foreigners to leave, and maybe some also hostages, as we can see now. The negotiations going so far to a final stage to allow some hostages to be released.
We're watching these pictures, and I want to draw our viewers' attention to huge explosions we've been seeing there. They've just been in the top right of the screen. Now, these are the latest pictures from the vicinity around the Indonesian hospital, where we've learned that massive shelling has been taking place. And Abraham, you and I were just talking earlier about intentionality and strategy here by the Israelis. Very interesting to see what their intentionality is now in doing this very close to one of the only remaining health facilities in that area that is still functioning, and they only continue to do so for the next few hours. Abraham, thank you for joining me again. Well, let's now speak to our correspondent on the ground, Tarek Abu-Azoum. He's joining us again from Khan Yunis, that's in the south of the Gaza Strip. Tarek, can you bring us up to date about what you're hearing? Obviously, we've seen very heavy shelling in the north. We know there's been this attack on Al-Nasser Children's Hospital. Are we seeing an intensified bombardment just in the last half hour or so?
Yes, during the last 10 minutes, the Israeli massive bombardment has spiked, in particular in the north of the Gaza Strip. The attacks were very close and around the vicinity of the Indonesian hospital. People who were residing in the yards of the hospital start to rush into the inside of the hospital to be protected from the Israeli relentless bombardment. This amount of airstrikes is unprecedented during the previous kinds of targeting to the vicinity of the Indonesian hospital. Also, the attacks continues around the vicinity of the Shifa hospital. It seems that the main concentration during the last half hour were generally on the vicinity of Gaza main central hospitals, as they had previously today attacked the Al-Nasser hospital, which is considered to be the main central hospital that provides medical care for young babies and newly born kids.
Tarek, we've been hearing obviously about all of these bombs, but we also know
I think it was 3 days ago or 4 days ago, the IDF showed intelligence photographs of the actual facilities of Hamas around and underneath the Indonesian hospital. Latest pictures show aftermath of bombing near Indonesian hospital in North Gaza. Wonder why. See, you know what? You know, the only way to solve this problem is total war.
Of the bombardment, but also of the siege, that so many health facilities have had to shut down. What is the state of affairs in northern Gaza at the moment? Who is still functioning? Is there anywhere that anyone can go for medical attention?
Now, with the ongoing relentless bombardments by the Israeli occupation air forces, which is accompanied by the ongoing fuel crisis, with the shortage of food and even with the destruction of bakeries and main water sources, the situation there is unbearable. People that are really no longer be able to cope with the situation on the ground in the north of the Gaza Strip. Literally, the bombardment is in every single corner of the north of Gaza Strip. People were evacuating to the southern areas on their foot in order to run away from that hill that is taking place in the north of the Gaza Strip. We are talking about hundreds of airstrikes every night, taking the lives of hundreds of Palestinians as well. The hospitals that are witnessing massive deteriorations in terms of the medical conditions, they are very running low in terms of medical supplies, as there's no any humanitarian aid have been delivered to the north of the Gaza Strip. And also, these hospitals are overwhelmed and flooded with patients and even displaced people who are trying to shelter inside these hospitals to be away from the relentless bombardment. Now, with these ongoing airstrikes in the vicinity of the Indonesian hospital in the north of the Gaza Strip, the Israeli occupation forces are trying to force citizens to leave the hospital and to evacuate to the southern areas of the Gaza Strip. Thus, they have a clear flexibility in terms of carrying out and to expand more military operations on the ground.
Tarek Abouazzoum there with the latest for us. A live report from Khan Yunis and the southern Gaza Strip. Thank you, Tarek. Well, the Reuters news agency has been reporting that the heads of the CIA and Israel's Mossad intelligence agency have met the Prime Minister of Qatar here in Doha to discuss a possible deal for captive releases as well as a pause in the fighting. Well, let's bring in Hashim Al-Bara. He's here with the latest on this developing story for us. Hashim, just an hour ago, you and I were talking about possible movement. This has all obviously been done very, very quietly. Is what we've seen in the last half hour or so, is this the movement that we were expecting?
Breaking news. Dr. Paul Cottrell is actually having his lunch. This is how I eat my hummus. So I have hummus in here. I add in sometimes lemon juice or sometimes apple cider vinegar. And then I put in the powder, like I said, you know, the probiotic and the lignins. And I just eat it that way. Don't you find it strange? Why is it a CIA guy, Burns, going over to the Middle East to broker some sort of hostage agreement? Why is that? Doesn't that seem like something that Blinken's supposed to do, or Kirby? Why is it a CIA guy? That's awfully odd. Must be something more going on. Israel's gonna fuck up Hamas. Trust me.
That is something that originated from talks behind those doors that took place here in Doha. And this explains why the Qataris have been very tight-lipped about the meeting that took place here in the capital, Doha, for the simple reason is that they do understand this is an extremely delicate issue with all the delicate details that are into play, and they want to give it a chance to further evolve into a settlement that could be conducive to what we saw initially. Now, but I have to say that the 4-hour suspension of fighting in Gaza falls short of the expectations in this part of the world, because people have been saying that against the backdrop of the death toll that has climbed significantly, exceeding 10,000, and the massive destruction in Gaza, we need a ceasefire, something that the Americans and the Israelis dismissed. However, when you look at the series of events starting from a few hours ago, we could get an indication that this could be a small step that could be conducive to something bigger. You have the Emir of Qatar in the United Arab Emirates. You have Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas in Egypt. The Emir of Qatar later is going to fly to Egypt to meet with Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. It could be an attempt to try to broker something significant.
Well, let me ask you about the tone of those discussions now in Cairo, because as you say, this 4-hour pause, this daily pause, falls far short of what a lot of people in the region were expecting. There was a lot of talk of a several-day ceasefire or a pause there. What will the conversation be like when you're putting all of these people into a room when expectations haven't been met?
This is definitely a war of semantics. The Israelis are insisting on humanitarian pauses for 4 hours. Hamas is looking for something bigger. They want to extend this into something that could be sustainable for the upcoming days. Then ultimately it gives you an indication that we are in the midst of talks between the Israelis and Hamas, mediated by Qatar, about how to move forward. And I would assume that it now boils down to whether Hamas is willing to release a significant number of captives that could convince the Israelis on the need to shift their narrative from humanitarian pauses to something that could be extended into a ceasefire.
Hashim Al-Bara.
The hostages and the civilian casualties should not be a calculus on how to conduct the war. The war needs to be completed. It needs to go all in, not half war, not incomplete war. All in, get the job done, knock out Hamas, knock out Hezbollah, knock out Iran. That means a regional conflict. The faster you do it, the better off all mankind's going to be. You can't trust these people. I'm telling you, you can't use this Westphalian diplomacy bullshit that has been going on for the last 50 years in that region.
Thank you for all of that. And obviously, this is a very fast-moving, developing story. We'll be staying on it with you. Thank you for that, Hashim. Well, joining us now by phone is Dr. Ahmed Mukhalati. He's an Irish-Palestinian surgeon. He joins us from the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. You work in the Gaza Strip's largest hospital, and I know supplies have been running extremely short. We've been hearing today from the Health Ministry that critical services at Al-Shifa may have to stop within 36 hours. Can you give us a sense of what things are like there on the ground at the moment?
Thank you for having me. And so the situation here is, briefly, the whole system has collapsed. So we are running out of most of the consumables, most of the instruments. The fuel for the main generator of the electricity is running out. So currently the hospital is mainly on the secondary smaller generator, trying to save the fuel for more days. So when you go to the hospital wards and buildings, it's almost all the lights are turned off, except for the ICUs, the theaters, and the emergency departments. Otherwise, when someone wants to go and see a patient in the ward, you have to use your phone light just to see the patients, to write the notes, to do what you want. We are running out of the most of the anesthesia medication. So this morning I had to change dressing on the children with no sedation. We used to do sedation for the big dressings for the burn patients, for the major trauma patients. So when you go there, they will tell you we run out of the sedation medication. You have to just manage it with some analgesia, which doesn't work at all. And then you ask the family to help you to hold the children. So the whole situation is collapsing. The hospital, the ophthalmology, the eye hospital is out of service now. The main pediatric hospital is out of service. We were struggling in another hospital for the last few hours, and then in the last hour they announced it's out of service because they were bombing the hospital and around the hospital, and then they couldn't continue. And then one of the kids died because of the inadequate support. He got medical support. The only psychiatric hospital of Gaza is out of service now. The pediatric specialty hospital, which is Teacher Hospital, is out of service now. The Shifa Hospital is the main hospital, but you keep getting bombing around the hospital or in the outyard of the hospital. So overnight there was a big bombing near the hospital, and just half an hour ago I was operating on a patient.
And that is the hospital that has the rocket launching sites around. So don't be surprised it gets freaking bombed. Now, I've been playing this for quite a while. You have not heard the word Hamas yet. I wonder why. And if you look at the Al Jazeera icon, it almost looks like some devil, you know, emerging from a fire.
I'm in the burn unit, which is in the north of the Shifa hospital, where there was a very big bombing. They just bombed one house just beside the hospital, where you feel everything is just totally, you know, moving like an earthquake. And then the people start running out, and then we have to stop the surgery because the people said it's unsafe. So no one feels it's safe. None of the consumables are enough here in the hospital. One of the other points I'm telling you, the Israelis are killing half of the people directly, but the other half being killed with inadequate treatment. So we are all running that. We are over-exhausted. We have been the same people running the service for more than a month now. Our capacity to deal with complex patients is going down. So when as a burn and plastic surgeon, when I see a patient with burn more than 50%, I know the amount of effort I need to invest in one patient to just try to help the patient to survive this 50% burn means at least 8 surgeries and maybe 2 weeks of ICU support. With the lack of ICU beds, with the lack of the time for theater, with the amount of acute casualties we keep getting in the hospital, I know that I feel disabled in front of the patient, and we have to prioritize many times, and then the patient to die in front of our eyes. With the same patient, a few months ago, I was able to save the patient. I was able to provide the patient with better care. Now, the whole understanding now.
This is an important point that this surgeon. This is an important point that the surgeon is saying. All right. Even though he said nothing about Hamas being around the hospital. We as citizens, we as humans, right, take for granted the advancements in healthcare, especially in surgery, all right, the last 100 years in advancements. And that it doesn't take much to snap back to the 18th or the 17th century if you're running out of supplies in terms of being able to, you know, to do surgeries, in terms of, you know, having the oxygen tanks and having the oxygen masks, and in terms of having the antibiotics and having the anesthetics and the anesthesia. So we, even though we have an amazing amount of knowledge in medicine, it is in a precarious situation because certain things it's predicated on a certain level of fragility, right? We need plastics. Healthcare is what it is today because of plastics, because of the petroleum out there, right? Petroleum industry. And medicines, right? But not just that, it's also power. Mankind has been in this kind of 150-year situation where things have been relatively stable because of our power grid. And it's a very small sliver of the whole time period of mankind, right? So we're living in kind of a unique period where there's stability. But once that power goes away, once the provisions for modern medicine go away, then you snap back to a pre-medicine era, a pre-surgery era. And it's much more difficult. So he's right, you know, but this is showing how fragile humans are and how much we need the blessing from on high to continue on with abundance. We only have this, we're only living in this special time period because of a blessing. But when we don't take care of that blessing, when we have a society that wants to kill children in the womb, don't be surprised that retribution happens and then there's children out of the womb that die. So we are all being punished. And we all have to realize that we are living on a very fragile foundation in terms of modern medicine, in terms of our modern life. Modernity is based on a very fragile foundation. And that fragility is bolstered up because of a blessing. When that blessing is gone or diminished, then it starts to, you start to see the fragility. You start to see things breaking down, such as this, right? So that is a very philosophical way of looking at it, without swearing up a storm, without blaming people, even though Hamas is wrong. And I'm still waiting for Al Jazeera to say Hamas.
Yeah, we will do our, we know it's not enough at all. Adding to all of this, we have around 50,000 people using the hospital as shelter, which is adding to the burden of the electricity, to the water consumed, to the amount of infection we are getting in the patients. I have seen many, many patients with worms coming out of their wounds. Whatever you do, whatever you try to do, you keep getting these worms. Now, for me, the standard dressing is using sugar as well as vinegar for the patient. And interestingly, it was like something I introduced to you, and then most of the time the nurses would refuse to use that sugar. Then I have to send one of my doctors to go and show the nurses how we use the mixture of vinegar and sugar to help the patient, because we run out of most of the needed dressing and needed instruments and needed, the fancy things, which is antimicrobial, which is the usual antiseptic dressing. We run out of all of these things, even the usual betadine, which is the standard way of antiseptic solution. We are running very short of that one, and we say like we have to consume only one bottle of half-liter for the whole department and theater, because we don't have enough of that. So that's the current situation. We're running out of everything.
She wants to shut the doctor up.
Impossible choices there.
She wants to shut the doctor up, but he's trying to explain how dire the situation is because they're running out of supplies, and it's only proving my point that mankind and its social systems are built on a very fragile foundation, and it needs a blessing. God's upset with all of us, and I'll tell you, a big part of it is these ultra fucking liberals that pushed a certain policy of destroying the family unit and killing children in the womb. And then we'll spend so much time trying to worry about the death of children out of the womb.
About being in theatre. So it does sound like you are still managing to carry out some operations. How long will that last? I know a lot of other hospitals have entirely been forced to shut down their surgical wards entirely.
So being in a Shift hospital, which is the major hospital, I have been pushing hardly to do the cases on my own, because under my department we have more than 400 patients needed plastic surgery procedures, and if you don't do this procedure, they go into bad infection, and then many times they go into amputation. Otherwise, they go into sepsis and they die because of the bad infection. So what I'm trying to do, I've been trying to push hard to do this. So I started running the theater, which is in burn unit, with no nurses because of the shortage of the healthcare professionals. So this theater, the one I'm running, is with no nurses, with anesthesia technician and a surgical anesthetist, with a little bit of anesthesia medication, and many times we do it with minimal anesthesia, because they will tell us, the guys, that what we have, we should leave it to the maximum. And if the procedure is not that much painful, we use a little bit of sedation, and then that's it. Because, so what I try to do, I try to adapt myself to what's there, but on the other hand, many days I was called by the admin of the hospital saying, the management, that you have to close the theater because we run out of the fuel for today, and then we have to stop your theater, your life, your system at for example, 8 o'clock in the evening, and then that's it. The same thing happened. Shifa Hospital being the biggest hospital in Gaza, with more than 18 operating theater rooms in the Shifa Hospital. The ones working now are no more than 6, because they can't run the electricity for these ones, because the theaters, they need their.
Israel warned 3 or 4 days ago that there was terrorist activity in that region around that hospital, and people were actually trying to find refuge there. And not one sentence about that on Al Jazeera. Not one sentence.
In their airflow things to keep it as much as you need sterile. So it's collapsed already. Many times we have the orthopedic department has mentioned more than 100 patients yesterday in the emergency department who need surgery, but we are not able to do the surgery. In my department, I have 250 patients who need surgery, but I'm unable to do this. And the challenge, when the family would come and ask you, what are you going to do? You have no answer. And then you say, I'm really so sorry, but I feel disabled because I can't do anything. I don't know what to tell you. And sometimes as a joke, I say, maybe your turn would come in January or something like that. Because
Doctor, you're being forced right now to decide who lives and who dies.
Unfortunately, we have been doing this since the beginning. So it has been like a decision taken between the medical director of the hospital, me as the head of the burn unit, as well as the chairman of ICU, that we can't.
These ultra-liberals don't fucking care what he has to say. They just want to accentuate the worst case. It's about you're making a decision on who's going to die or not. Well, he's in a triage situation.
It has been happening now, and many times, as an internal message between us, the general manager of the hospital, Dr. Abu keeps sending us, guys, we know you have been working hard, we know you have been trying your best, but sometimes the situation is out of our control, it's out of our hands. So don't feel like this is, because it keeps, the sympathy you get and the empathy with the patient sometimes would just limit your capabilities to work. And then we try to say this is what we can do, and we have been working hard. But it's what's on the ground that we know we could have done better to the patient. No one has evacuated patients out of the Shifa Hospital except for maybe 50 patients. No one has evacuated the patient, the people who have been using the Shifa as shelter. So what happens that if I operate on a patient and I just send them home, they will tell you, where is home? I'm so sorry, I can't go anywhere. And then the patient will stay in the hospital.
Doctor, we're literally watching right now images of the shelling, the aftermath of the shelling that's taken place around the Indonesian hospital, which is also in northern Gaza. We know, as you were telling us, the Al Nasser Children's Hospital has now had to completely shut down.
Terrorist hospital
all of these other health
and
facilities.
terrorist launch sites around the hospital.
A lot more of the healthcare burden at Al Shifa Hospital. I mean,
Israel's doing the right thing.
Able to go home. Are you now also having to deal with additional strain because you're taking on more patients from elsewhere?
Yeah, I think we are now the ones covering the pediatric, the other specialties of the psychiatric patient even will come to Shifa Hospital. Yeah. So in the main plan for the hospital, Shifa was for trauma mainly. Currently, it's the only hospital covering the center of Gaza, which means a lot of burden on the hospital itself. And I will tell you, this morning when I was doing the round, I have seen a child who's 5-year-old with his eye. He was unable to open both eyes. And then I said, Dad, what about the ophthalmologist? They said there is no ophthalmologist.
We're going to go to commercial for P&A. Take turmeric. It reduces inflammation. And what that will do is it'll help to get your body to heal. A lot of people in the United States are chronically inflamed. They have chronic issues. Bring down that inflammation by taking turmeric. When you're sick, let's say you caught a cold, take extra turmeric and it'll help to heal. This is also an antioxidant. So again, it'll slow down the oxidative process. Another item that you should be taking every day is ashwagandha. It controls your blood glucose levels, reduces inflammation. Clarity factor helps to get rid of the brain fog, gets those dendrites active and connected so you have better memory and you'll have more mental clarity. When you take this in the morning or in the afternoon, you'll be able to do your work or do your schooling with more clarity. Then take Goodnight formula on my store, which has tryptophan and melatonin in it, and it will allow you to get 3 cycles of REM sleep. That will help you to solidify memory. That'll also help to detox your body at the cellular level and at the neuron and glial level. Your brain needs to rest, go into a cycle of sleep, have well-rested sleep, and your body will detox. When you do that, your body will be healthier. And there is a correlation between poor sleep and dementia. So get the Goodnight formula on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, to improve your mental health. Probiotic. You need a good gut biome. This is a powder. You saw me eat the hummus during breaking news. And what you do is you put, in a smoothie or in hummus or in something soft or even in water and take it every day. A good gut biome will allow you to absorb the nutrients that you take throughout the day. It'll allow you to have consistent stools. And in addition, it'll allow for the proper metabolism to take place, not just in your gut, but also in your liver. There's a communication that takes place between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. Make sure that you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we have made the best deodorant that you can get. All right? It's made in citrus scent and also in peppermint lavender. It's made from Himalayan essential oils that have a certain harmonic to it. All right. And it's very high quality. It'll act as a detox. So you're detoxifying your body each day and you're using it as a deodorant. I believe in giving products on my store that have dual purpose. This is one of those dual purpose products. Use this every day as a deodorant, but it'll also help to detox. It doesn't have any aluminum in it. You're going to get healthier by taking this product. Magnesium and zinc. You need to take this every day. But during the cold season, you need to take a double dose of this to help to fight colds. So take this product, magnesium and zinc, and you will fare better. It'll help with your immune system. I have C60, which is a very strong antioxidant on my store. I have it in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and 8 ounce. I have it in coconut and avocado. You take a teaspoon of it a day, all right? And you will neutralize those reactive oxygen species, reduce the cellular stress, and increase your mitochondrial health and improve your ATP. If you do this on a regular basis, you're going to actually age slower. It's part of the anti-aging protocol. It's one of the main pillars. There are 3 pillars to it. Neutralize pathogens with liquids and gels of structural nanosilver. Neutralize reactive oxygen species with C60. This is one of those 2 ounce bottles that's in coconut, but I have it in avocado also. And reduce inflammation by taking like the turmerics and the ashwagandhas. And then you add stuff to it like the zincs and the D3 and the Goodnight formula and the collagen and the clarity factor. But if you follow what I offer and you take it regularly, you are going to slow down your aging process. And when you do that, you're going to improve your immune system. And you're allowing for your immune system to have the energy it needs and the lower stress that it needs to be able to get healthier. And when you couple that with proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, and proper mental exercising, like reading, writing, and talking to people in the real world, and not listening to crazy liberals, you'll get healthy. You'll age slower. So follow my advice, follow the protocol, and you're going to do much better. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. It's a very strong antioxidant. It's very potent. Take a teaspoon of this a day. If you work out a lot and you need to recover quicker, take the C60 before your workout, and you'll notice that you'll heal faster. Your recovery is faster. I have a lot of products on my store. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you will get healthier. And you support my work. Because where are you going to get this unvarnished news? In my very unique perspective. Now back to Al Jazeera. It's afraid to say Hamas.
Because it's like the hospital has been shut down and no one is coming. Sometimes you get one coming every other day or the third day. And then I tried to open the eyes of the patient, and then I found one eye was like full of blood, the eyelashes. And then I opened the eye. The other one had like a big red color thing with injury to the conjunctiva. I don't know what underneath said. And then I said, we need ophthalmologist. But they said, there is no ophthalmology now. And then there is no ophthalmology literally. It's not like, we are facing this as it has been shut down. No, there is no ophthalmology service in Shifa Hospital because the main hospital has been shut down. And then most of the healthcare professionals, they felt unsafe because they were bombed in the hospital. And then whenever they, as a human being with families, sometimes they prefer to go to the safer place, which is assumed to be south of Gaza. And then many of the healthcare professionals would go there to the south of Gaza, which is apparently not safe because not less than 45% of the casualties and the killed people are from south.
Indeed, the bombardments are continuing in the south as well. Doctor, you mentioned that you specialize in burns and that you work in the burns unit. Can you describe the kinds of injuries that you've been seeing? Given the bombardments we've been seeing, I imagine they've been very extensive.
So, I moved from London last February, so this is the first war I've been attending in Gaza. But as per my colleagues here, most of the world, the weapons we used were something with very little burn element of this one. But in this world, exceptionally, the amount of burn is really horrible. So we see a lot of extensive burn, very deep burn, as well as strange thing of inhalation and injuries coming with most of the patients. So at least every bombing which is happening, they will call us for maybe 15 to 20% of the patients who have been bombed will get burn injuries. Adding to all these things, when I treat these patients, they will go into infection very fast. Either they die very fast because of the infection, because of the depth of the burn. So the depth of the burn is very severe. The extent of burn, I mean like 40% of the body, or 50% or 70%. And what I have seen in many of the dead bodies is the whole skin will be melted until the bone comes out of the body. And I have seen this in two large patients with isolated limb. One of them was isolated limb. The bone was coming out of the skin, which just has been melted. And then the other patient had half of the body being badly burned, and then that didn't survive more than 2 hours. So the amount of burn we see is exceptionally catastrophic. It's not the usual one. They keep trying new weapons on our people. These are new weapons where they keep.
We see the carnage of the civilians right now, the death of the children, the loss of the parents. the the massive burns and the crushed victims from the buildings. There's a lot of carnage. And again, there's a divine retribution that's taking place. And they allowed Hamas to dig in. But there's also the carnage and the PTSD and the effects on the medical staff. The doctors, the surgeons, the nurses, the techs, all of them. They see this day in, day out, and it will strain them, and it will, and they're running on adrenaline. And sometimes it doesn't hit them until after the adrenaline wears out. And these healthcare workers are trying to, they spent a lot of time getting their training, and they're trying to help people now, and there's another dimension of the casualty, and that is the post-traumatic stress, right, of the civilian population, but that's also in the healthcare population that is servicing all these people with very little resources. So it's it's tough for these people. And I have seen some post-traumatic stress within some healthcare providers during the COVID crisis. And it's real, and this is much more intense of, what he's describing for the healthcare workers. But there is a stress, and these healthcare workers need people's understanding, especially after they get through this, because they're running on adrenaline. And once they get through this, they're going to sit back, and it's going to be hard for them to process. And that's another added dimension of war. But the reality of the situation is that mankind has been doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Should we have made weapons of mass destruction, especially in biologics? No. Did mankind actually forcefully shut down the weapons labs? No. Are we continuing on development of nuclear weapons? Yes. Did mankind shut that down? No. Did mankind allow for additional fetuses to be killed in mass? Did mankind stop that? No. So there is carnage at the human level. There's pain and suffering at the human level. But it is not looking at this in its full totality until you realize that mankind has been doing things that it shouldn't be doing. And we have been drifting away from precepts of the Bible and of the Torah that leads to destruction. And the destruction of the family unit, the destruction of fetuses, the push of these ultra-liberal agendas, the sexualization of children, the gender fluidity, and all this stuff as antithetical to the Bible. This is part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason why mankind is being cursed. And we need to come to grips with that. Once we come to grips with that, then we will realize that it is in our power to change course, to repent, to make things right, and to have peace on this earth. I'm going to leave it there. I've been going on this video for quite a while. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 6 channels. I have 3 YouTube channels. And I have Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. Please make sure, if you could, to help support my work by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. On the homepage at the very bottom, you can donate through Stripe or PayPal. You can also donate through Buy Me a Coffee. Be a paid subscriber on Patreon. I make sure that all my videos, even if you agree or disagree with me, I make sure that all my videos are free for everybody. Now, there is a censorship that takes place on YouTube, especially through the crisis that we just went through. But you'll be able to find those on those backup channels, Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble, right? And some of the other mirrored channels that people have done. So please share my work. Please help support by donating. But better yet, go to my store and get the health products, because it helps support the news coverage I do. But better yet, it actually, if you follow my protocol, it'll actually make you healthier. Preventative medicine is a great way to lower your risks for more serious diseases down the road, especially in the United States when you're talking about cardiovascular disease, dementia, and, Alzheimer's and diabetes. These things can be mitigated if you take care of your body. So please, it's not a silver bullet, but it goes a long way. It lowers the risk factors. So please listen to me, go to the store, get the health products, follow the protocols, do it regularly. Thank you for supporting my work. And please, whatever you do, do not become a blue-haired, crazy ultra-liberal. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.